Okay, good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to today's launch of the Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report 2026. This year's report provides the most up-to-date data and insights on how our region is progressing towards the Sustainable Development Goals. It celebrates areas of real achievement and momentum, while also shining a light on the challenges that hold us back. To walk us through the key findings of what they mean for the future of sustainable development in our region, we are honored to be joined by three distinguished colleagues, Mr. Shombi Sharp, Deputy Executive Secretary for Partnerships and Coordination, Ms. Rachel Bevan, Director of Statistics, and Mr. Armand Bidarbaknia, Head of Statistical Data Management Unit from ESCAP. I also would like to welcome everyone joining us online through the Zoom link and the LinkedIn Live. So, to begin our program today, it is my honor to invite Mr. Shombi Sharp to deliver his keynote remarks and officially launch the report. Shombi.
This is on. Thank you. Thank you so much, dear colleagues. It's a great honor to be here to join you. My first time in the Foreign Correspondents Club here in Bangkok, Thailand. My first opportunity as the newest member of the ESCAP family to participate in this truly flagship annual milestone, the release of the Asian Pacific SDG Progress Report. I've been like all of you, a very avid consumer of this report each and every year in my past lives within the UN system as resident coordinator and other positions. So very pleased now to be a part of the team bringing this important source of evidence and data to all of you. Perhaps I could also start by wishing everybody a very happy and prosperous Lunar New Year. I think, very much aligned with the spirit of looking at how do we ensure a prosperous path ahead and the spirit of the new year. So wishing all of that the best to you. I think just to start with, as is often the case, we see there is good news and there is bad news in the world. Now, on the one hand, the bad news is that we remain, as the Secretary General has highlighted, very much off track globally in terms of actually only 20% of targets on track. So in other words, the Sustainable Development Goals being 80% off track. And at the same time, we do see a lot changing in the world. This presents new challenges. This presents new opportunities. Challenges, we've seen significant declines in ODA, for example. We've seen significant increases in barriers to trade and mobility. At the same time, we've seen increasingly robust, in fact, a new world in the sense of the global south, if I can use that term, has now become the driver, the locus of the majority of global growth and economic progress and innovation as well. Here in the Asian Pacific region, in the ESCAP region, we look at something like 50% of global GDP, 50% of the wealth that we have with which, if used correctly, to deliver prosperity and inclusion, 60% of the world's population as well. So I think, now and looking forward, this truly is the place, meaning the region, to be speaking about opportunities and reasons for hope. We have 5 years left now. We're at that last kind of push to get to 2030. And that's why this data, this analysis is so very important for decision makers. The report shows that life for ordinary people in many respects becomes more fragile, more fraught in the face of climate change, for example. There are concerning trends in terms of compliance with labor rights, occupational injuries. The question is, do the gains that we have in terms of economic growth translate into progress on SDG 9, looking at industry, innovation, and infrastructure, decent work for all? That's ultimately what we are all about. SDG, Sustainable Development Goal 13, climate action, remains a grave concern, and the colleagues will go into much more detail on that, as does life below water, SDG 14, and life on land, SDG 15. I've mentioned, though, ODA, broadly speaking, declining, but the good news is ODA for biodiversity in the Asia and Pacific region has doubled, so we know that that takes time. There's a lag effect to translate into positive realities, but that's a very important direction that we will be watching very closely. So needless to say, one of the core let's say, products and services of ESCAP is to provide data, to provide credible, timely data for policymakers. Still, we do lack the full picture. We lack the full picture in terms of who is being left behind. It's leaving no one behind, ultimately, is our guiding mantra. But we need ever more granular data. This is a complex world that we live in, complex societies that we live in. We need granular data by age, by sex, by migratory status, mobility, and many other aspects to truly understand what is happening within populations. So I will be very brief here, because again, the most interesting part is yet to come. But truly, our region, the ESCAP region in Asia and Pacific, is not only positioned to become wealthier, it is positioned to become smarter, it is positioned to become healthier, but only if we all work together and align our efforts. And the SDGs is very much, remains our lodestar to guide us in that direction, and leveraging the data that we have, because the message ultimately is very clear. Asia Pacific matters. I would even say perhaps matters more or not less than any other region in the world looking forward. But if we stand together, if we deliver together, then we really truly can have reason for optimism that we will achieve the 2030 agenda and beyond, and we will also have discussions in that line. So thank you very much. It's my, again, pleasure to pass the floor to my colleague Rachel and Arman as well. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shombi. Thank you very much, Shombi. So good morning, everyone, and let me also wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. And it's my pleasure to be with you today to share the key highlights from the 2026 Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report. And hopefully for those in the room, you will have picked up a copy of the highlights brochure on your way in. So this year, we're actually celebrating the 10th anniversary of ESCAP's SDG Progress Report. And this is our flagship series that was launched back in 2016 and is really designed to inform and to accelerate the region's journey towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So let me start by sharing a few key messages from the report. First, with only 5 years left to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, our region is not on track to achieve any of the 17 SDGs. Across most goals, progress is either too slow or has stalled completely. At the current pace, the Asia-Pacific region will miss 88% of measurable SDG targets, and that is those for which we actually have at least 2 data points. Second, we are seeing an alarming pattern of regression, particularly in the environmental dimension. As in previous years, the region continues to move backwards on Goal 13, that's climate action, and that really is undermining earlier hard-won gains and increasing climate risks faced by communities across the region. Thirdly, the promise to leave no one behind is faltering. The data shows setbacks on ensuring equal access to education, that's target 4.5, and on ensuring equal access to justice, target 16.3. And these setbacks signal widening inequalities for those already the most vulnerable. There are, however, areas of solid progress, and the region continues to make progress on Goal 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, where no targets are in decline, and on Goal 3, good health and well-being, which is being driven by steady reductions in maternal and child mortality. And finally, while data availability is improving, we still do face significant data gaps. Today, 55% of the SDG indicators have enough data for progress assessment, which does actually place Asia and the Pacific ahead of other regions. However, major gaps remain, and we still cannot track 52 SDG targets due to insufficient data. And that limits our ability to track progress, but also to be able to direct efforts where they're needed the most. So now let's look in more detail at progress at the global level. And this snapshot gives us a clear and comprehensive picture of how our region has progressed on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals since 2015. And if you look at the vertical line on the chart, that's where we should be if we were on track. And ideally, every one of those bars would have reached that vertical line or even surpassed it. But as you can see here, that's not what's happening. There are areas where progress is stronger. So Goal 1 on no poverty, Goal 3 on good health and well-being, Goal 6 on clean water and sanitation, and Goal 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and these show the most improvement. However, even in these areas, the progress is still too slow to meet the 2030 targets. In contrast, Goal 13 on climate action is moving in the wrong direction. Not only are we off track, we're actually regressing, making the climate challenge even harder to address over time. For Goal 5, on gender equality, and Goal 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions, we really do not have enough data to be able to assess progress. And for the remaining goals, there is progress, but it's still too slow to deliver on the 2030 agenda. When we look deeper into progress at the target level, the picture is very mixed. And I know you can't read all the details on this slide, but hopefully those in the room have got a copy in front of them, and all the information is, of course, on our website. But in this picture, the colors are what really tells the story. So there are 117 targets where we have enough data to measure progress, and these are shown in either red, amber, or green. And there are 14 targets which are on track to meet the 2030 deadline, and these are the ones shown in green. These pockets of progress show us that progress is possible. When we have the right policies, partnerships, and investments, we can make progress. But beyond these pockets of progress, the majority of the picture is far more concerning. Out of the 117 targets, which I said have sufficient data, 88% are projected to be missed. And most of these are the targets shown in amber, where we're moving forward, but nowhere near fast enough to meet the 2030 deadline. Even more troubling are the 20 targets shown in red, where we're actually moving in the wrong direction. And we also show here the areas in grey, and those are a different challenge altogether. For around a third of all SDG targets, we simply do not have enough data to be able to determine if we are moving forward, or if we're standing still, or falling behind. And these gaps severely limit our ability to act effectively. Let me turn now to another important part of this year's report, And this is the dashboard of SDG trends for all countries and territories in the ESCAP region. And this dashboard gives us a simple comparative snapshot of how each economy is progressing. So the countries and territories within each of the ESCAP sub-regions, and there are 5 sub-regions, and we've ordered them by the number of targets where they're showing positive movement. So on this slide, you can see in the example for East and Northeast Asia, we have shown them by the highest number of targets which are progressing. So China is shown at the top with the most progress, followed by Mongolia. That's for the East and Northeast Asia sub-region. But this snapshot helps us to understand where momentum is building and where more support is needed. But it also shows that there is some good news, because across every sub-region, we do see countries demonstrating positive trends on several SDG targets. And these examples help to remind us that progress is achievable, and they give us also some valuable lessons that we can build on and scale up. Another positive development that we're seeing is that statistical systems across the Asia-Pacific region have made steady progress in improving SDG data availability. And currently, there are 55% of indicators which now have 2 or more data points, and that's up from just 43% back in 2020. And this means we can now assess many more trends than we could just a few years ago. However, this improvement still falls short of what's needed for effective monitoring, and even with this progress, we still lack data for 1/3 of all the SDG indicators. And that does make it difficult to track progress in a comprehensive manner or to support fully informed policy making. And closing these data gaps remains essential if we want to understand where progress is happening and also where urgent action is still required. And when we take a closer look at the most significant data gaps, we can see some important patterns. First, the Asia-Pacific region faces major data shortfall in 2 critical areas: Goal 5, which is gender equality, and Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. But these gaps don't just limit our ability to track progress, they also make it much harder to drive the meaningful change that these goals demand. We also see very limited data for Goal 14, life below water, Goal 13, climate action, and Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. And these are central pillars of sustainable development, yet we still lack the information needed to fully understand the challenges or to be able to design targeted solutions. But on a more positive note, data availability is comparatively stronger for Goal 7 on clean energy, and Goal 17, partnership for the goals, and Goal 15, life on land. And these areas we have much more solid evidence base, and that's something we can build on as we push towards achieving the 2030 agenda. Overall, though, the message is clear. Strengthening data systems is not just a technical issue. It's essential for being able to accelerate progress where it matters most. So as we mark 10 years of SDG reporting in Asia and the Pacific, one thing is clear. This region has shown remarkable resilience, innovation, and commitment. Yes, gaps remain, but so does enormous potential. And with stronger data, stronger partnerships, and stronger resolve, we can accelerate progress where it's needed most. I encourage all of you here in the room, but also online, do please dive deeper into the findings and explore the full story in our online report using the links which you can see here. So I hope that all of you will do that, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for the insightful overview of the report, as well as Shombi for the bigger picture of where we are now in this journey towards 2030. And with that, now we would like to open the floor for questions and for interactions with the panel here. I'll be taking questions from the floor as well as online. If you do have questions online, please write them in the chat. And we've also received some questions ahead of time for people that registered. And so we have selected a few as well. So we could start from the floor if anyone would like to start off. And I'll be taking maybe two questions at a time. There's a microphone in the back, or perhaps someone can help pass the microphone. We have the gentleman here.
Could I ask, particularly the fellow who hasn't spoken yet, who's in charge of statistics, I think. Could I ask you to comment specifically on Goal 7, which includes clean renewable energy, where the presentation said that there was an adequate statistical base. I would, from my own personal experience, I would question that. The IEA produced a report as recently as last October, which shows clearly that Thailand, particularly we're in Thailand today, Thailand is bottom of the world in progress on renewable energy. The only country that it joins it at the bottom of the world is Ukraine, whose Minister of Energy was arrested yesterday trying to flee the country on corruption, to avoid corruption charges. So that is the evidence that I see. Now, in discussing that here, I find people saying, oh no, it's all fine in Thailand, and they produce additional data from, or additional declarations from the IEA saying there's been good progress and Thailand is swimming along nicely in renewable energy, as you hear from some institutions here. What could you comment on the question of the statistical base and whether it is adequate in renewable energy across your region?
Thank you very much. We really appreciate also statistical questions. If there's any other question, we can also ask now, and then the panel can respond both. Yes, please.
Hello. Yes, thank you very much, and thanks for your transparency with the findings of the report. I have a broader question, just from a regional perspective, trying to deliver on the goals. You mentioned a lot about the absence of data to track progress. Does that translate also over to data on how to deliver more effectively on the goals? And regardless of whether it's both or just one or the other, amid aid retrenchment and the massive funding challenges we're facing, not just in civil society, but also with the multilateral institutions that are trying to deliver on the goals, what can we do to repurpose our efforts to focus on doing more with less?
Thank you. So let's give a chance now the panel to respond, and then we'll go back to more questions. Please.
Okay. Thank you for very interesting questions. First one on Goal 7 on energy. So the question has two parts, right? First on data availability, which is one of the best goals among the 17, and second is on the progress of countries, particularly in Thailand. The number of indicators across 17 goals is unbalanced. It can range between 7 to 23 to 25 indicators. So when we talk about data availability on each goal, it is availability of indicators out of the total number of SDG, formal SDG, official SDG indicators. But is that sufficient to fully understand the energy sustainability in a country? No. we need to use a lot more nuanced indicators to fully understand. But in this report, of course, for the sake of comparability, we use only the official SDG indicator framework. And SDG 7 happens to have one of the least number of indicators, I think around 7 indicators, out of which I think 6 or all 7 are available in the region. But there's a lot more indicators that are important indicators to understand SDG 7, but they're not part of the indicator framework, and of course we're not using it for this report. On the progress of countries, of course, this report shows the overall progress of the region, an average progress made by all countries in the region. But it is really mixed. Some countries have made less progress than the regional average, some have made more. If you visit our SDG Gateway, it provides you country profiles. So basically you can see Thailand progress on SDG 7 on all of these 7 official SDG indicators. And I'm now moving to the second question on the how of achieving the SDGs. Each SDG, each goal consists of indicators on both outcome or results and what we call means of implementation. The means of implementation indicators are supposed to help us understand how we're doing in implementing the SDGs. Indicators such as financing, such as putting in place right policies, such as signing off on treaties and international commitments. All of those are indicators that show how much resource we put in implementation of the SDGs, and those are part of this analysis when data is available.
And just to add one more point as well on that second question, in terms of data availability, what we're looking at here is SDG data, so it's the kind of internationally comparable data. We actually know that in most countries, there's a lot more data that's available, that's collected by other line ministries for other purposes, but may not kind of feed into the international SDG data set. So actually, when we're talking about action that's taking place within a country, then they're often using much more local kind of data that is available that might not be internationally comparable. So there is a lot more kind of detailed information on a much kind of broader range of topics, but only available within the country.
Thank you. Actually, the question also about achieving the SDGs, I think there's also a facet of financing as well that you mentioned, right? And I think this connects with a question we received before from the registration form, and that I'll read for you, and I think maybe the panel could also shed some light. The question reads, considering the current global economic slowdown and fiscal constraints, what innovative financing mechanisms does the report recommend for accelerating SDG progress in the region?
Okay, I'll just take a first stab at that and then hand over to the colleagues. I mean, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're seeing, dramatic changes in sort of the broader economic geopolitical landscape affecting trade and FDI and ODA and all of these things. We've now estimated already the SDG financing gap to be between sort of $2.5 to $4 trillion a year. That has been increasing in recent years. That gap has been growing as investment has been falling short. And this situation, it appears to be worsening now as more, as greater pressures are placed on domestic fiscal space, which is already constrained and increasingly constrained. So, but I think in terms of, turning challenges into opportunities, this is now shining the light even more brightly on the important role, of course, of domestic resources and aligning public financing with the SDGs, about bringing in, engaging with the private sector. We realize that public budgets are critical, but the private sector at the end of the day, in my view, will be the difference whether or not we achieve the SDGs, aligning business models and value chains and all of these things in a sustainable path. We know that, you know, $2.5 to $4 trillion sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But on the other hand, global capital markets, depending on your metric, you know, come in at 120, 130, 140 trillion, something like that. So it's obviously not at all about do we have the money available, resources available. You look at what we, as a society, spend on other, one could say perhaps non-essential elements. And so that's clearly not the point. The point is the alignment. The point is how to partner with innovative financing instruments with the private sector. So we're doing lots of work. ESCAP's doing lots of work on this. The UN system, our partners, the multilateral development banks working on this through all kinds of solutions, green bonds and blue bonds, sustainability-linked instruments, blended financing, first loss, getting in there in a blended approach where our higher risk capital can take on the certain layers. So I think that's really, you know, that's the good news, is that we're getting a better view on what is there, what is available to tap, but we have to work on the instruments with which we can tap those resources. Also doing a lot of work in terms of helping to surface those bankable projects, investments, make it easier for the private sector and for public sector to come together to partner around renewable energy, for example, as the question was there. You know, we've got a lot of outreach partnership platforms like the ESCAP Sustainable Business Network, you know, really trying to bring in, change the way that we talk and we think and benefit from private sector perspectives, because that, at the end of the day, is really going to make the difference. I mean, my experience has been most recently in India. And, you know, there I think one has to, we have to have a very, you know, complex understanding of complex situations. So while demand is growing, aspirational consumption demand is growing significantly, and therefore we see pressures on continued use of carbon-based energy. We also see incredible investments in renewable energy capacities, incredible investments in electric mobility, electric vehicles, in solar and wind and green hydrogen and these sorts of things. So it's really about understanding the challenges and embracing the very important progress that's being made, and help spread that, make that available to the other countries of the region who are maybe not as advanced in terms of the technologies required.
Thank you. Maybe we go back to the floor here and take some more questions, and then other panelists can also have a chance to answer. Please.
Yes, Kirk Person, SL Global. I'm assuming, does your report treat the thematic indicators to any degree, and is there any indication of how many Asian Pacific governments are actually paying attention to the thematic indicators, kind of to get this more granular view that we talked about?
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, gentleman in the back.
I wanted to know, in the database, does it also include the estimates, like there are many data points based on modeling, like on child mortality or on malnutrition? So is the current database also including those estimates, or only those model-based estimates, or only the estimates coming from surveys or censuses or other sources? Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question about the sources. Maybe we take a few more. The gentleman here in the front first.
Yeah, my question is with
No.
yeah, my question is with regards to the media, because I'm journalist myself.
We can hear you.
I'm not sure they can hear
I don't know,
online.
online.
The
Yes.
journalists, okay. You see, the journalism culture is so adversarial. And these days I don't consume the mainstream media because it depresses you. But there is also a movement within the UN, it started by China, supported by India and many other countries of the global south, even some European countries, to redefine human rights, which is more based on development rights. So now I am involved with some project leading Chinese and Indian universities on SDG reporting training. We call for communicators, not really journalists. And just before I came, I just sent a proposal to the University of South Pacific, consultant for the journalism program, for a workshop on setting up reporting SDGs news network. Now at UN ESCAP, have you been discussing about the role of communication, especially maybe new social media type of communication networks, to spread this SDG message at the very grassroots level? We are looking at grassroots level rather than national level, because that's where these need to be
Thank you.
made aware and action taken. So what is UN ESCAP looking at these issues?
Thank you for the questions. Please.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I can respond to the first two questions and let Rachel to talk about the third one. The first one on thematic indicators. The poster you see behind me, this stand, it's advertising our tool, National SDG Tracker, which is developed by ESCAP to support countries adopting all of these thematic indicators in their national context. As we speak today, more than 20 countries in Asia Pacific have used this tool to track progress at their national level using official SDG indicators complemented by their nationally prioritized thematic indicators. So the answer is yes. Increasingly, governments are taking it more seriously. We have assessed the voluntary national reviews that countries are basically presenting at the high-level political forum in New York every year. The use of data in those reports has drastically increased since 2016, when countries started to report on the SDGs without evidence, to now that almost every country is reporting on SDGs, starting by showing a dashboard as we show here, basically. So it's becoming very evidence-based, the way that countries are implementing and reporting on SDGs. Not perfect, but the progress is very promising. On the second question, modeling, you're right. Lots of SDG indicators involve modeling and adjustments because international custodian agencies try to maintain comparability across countries. Therefore, they will need to do some sort of adjustment or estimates. But there is a formal mechanism for data and metadata exchange between countries and international agencies. So all of these models or modeled data or adjusted data are being all sent to countries for verification. And when published on the global level, it means there is no objection from country to those statistics. Third one on media and communication, I think Rachel can explain.
Sure, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. So I think there is quite a lot that we are doing in this area. So in particular, back in December 2024, we had our ESCAP Committee on Statistics, where we meet with all our member states and associate members. And one of the things we did there was agree to actually promote a whole of society approach in our work. So in the kind of statistical work, really working with countries and encouraging them to adopt a whole of society approach. And what we mean by that is actually working at the country level with a whole range of partners. So working much more actively with civil society, working with academia. So we are, you know, kind of, that's something that countries, member states actually made that commitment to do, to adopt a whole of, to promote kind of whole of society approach in their work. And what we're doing now is set up a small, we a small task team working on that with member states, but also with civil society partners as well, to look at what does that actually mean in practice. So we have been kind of, advancing that work. It takes us a bit of time, but we do have a number of kind of different areas that we're trying to push ahead on that. But Amon, you also lead on that.
Yes.
Data and Statistics Horizon team, a DASH team that we've got working specifically on that.
Not much to add, only just recognizing that this is a new topic for official statistical systems, and they're working on it. What the task team Rachel mentioned is trying to do is to develop some sort of conceptual framework for countries to be able to adopt this approach and compile good practices. The good news is that we have many good practices across the region where national statistical offices engage with communities, with civil society, with media to make statistics more understandable and accessible for public. So this is what we're trying to do and hope that more countries can replicate those good practices.
I could just perhaps add one thought that we have, in fact, the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development kicking off next week. And prior to that, we collaborate with People's Forum and Youth Forum. And what's really fantastic about all of this kind of stream of initiatives is that it brings civil society community messages right into the heart of the intergovernmental sort of process. And so that links up Asia Pacific. It's here. We're gathering. It's a space for communities to share their views on SDGs, on future priorities, these things. And then it all gets carried directly to New York and the high-level political forum there and the General Assembly process, ECOSOC and such. So really this, what we need is this movement, we were calling it India, Jan Andolan, of, SDGs, of the spirit, the messages getting out there in communities. And the best messenger is, of course, communities themselves and the results of the collaborations that we have around sustainability. On the communication side, I think, the media landscape has changed dramatically, obviously. And the UN hasn't always been considered the most sophisticated, savvy, communication machine necessarily. But we're looking at ways to increasingly innovate, collabs, collaboration with social media influencers, using different media, different platforms, absolutely important. I could just say, I just yesterday was. Speaking to a group of Japanese civil society organizations, the Japan Civil Society SDG Network, which brings together 130 different civil society organizations working both, not just in Japan, but across the region as well. So just one example of many where we're really trying to experiment and innovate.
Thank you. There's a question in the back.
Thank you very much. Has there been more thought given to developing the business angle with SDGs to really get the message across? Because health is the main generator of wealth. If you go and boost up the health of the communities, the health within individual business organizations, it's been shown to be a cash generator. Also, it's one of the things that creates long-term benefits for all, and it helps reset the minds of industry to be on a more sustainable path. Do you have any key examples of how this can be done, or any thoughts on how we can bring this message further forward to empower the people and see the real value of the SDGs and how we can best bring them forward in a cost-effective manner? Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other question from the floor, I'll invite the panel to answer, but we also have another question that was sent beforehand that I thought maybe could be connected to this one. And I would like to also ask the panel, which is, how should the interconnectedness between climate action, inequality, economic growth, and social stability be reconceptualized to guide a more integrated regional SDG strategy. So a question about health and one about the interconnectedness of the SDGs.
I can talk on the second one. The first question was more on how is there a good practice on making a business case for SDGs, and health was an example. I don't know if there's something Shombi wants to highlight from ESCAP work, but I can talk on the second question, which is very interesting actually, on interconnectedness of the SDG targets. We do recognize the interlinkages of SDGs being very important to understand the full picture of how we are making progress. At the same time, as I already mentioned, this report is using the formal structure of the SDGs, 17 goals, 169 targets, which leaves very limited scope for understanding the interlinkages. However, I have a good news, and I'm pleased to inform that we have done an additional analysis this year. It's called Companion Analysis to the SDG Progress Report, and you can find it on the same report page as SDG report is published. And this analysis aims to understand, to investigate basically how countries in the region have shifted starting from 2015 on 6 transition areas. These transition areas basically try to capture the interconnection of different SDG targets. Each transition area can range indicators from 2 to 8 different goals. So basically, for instance, on energy, it's not only SDG 7, all indicators related to energy. On education, all indicators related to education, indirectly or directly, are captured. So this analysis will give you a much better idea of how we are transitioning on multidimensional aspects of the SDGs, which is complementary to this SDG report. So I invite you to have a look at that paper on the SDG report page. On the business case, any of you wanted to?
Sure. No, thanks. I think the question on the business case, again, really this fundamentally, in my view, is ultimately the most important question, because it is business, it is the private sector, which at the end of the day will either provide or not provide the bulk of decent jobs, the bulk of the investment in renewable energies and in innovation in AI that is not furthering divides in society and so on. So that really is the key, and that's a core focus of a lot of the work that the UN system and ESCAP in particular are doing, is really to bring the alignment into sharper focus, to show that it's not an additional cost, that sustainability and profit is not either or, but rather aligns, and demonstrating that renewable energy actually is a more profitable path at the moment, that green transitions are pathways towards greater job creation and decent jobs as well. The health impact was mentioned, absolutely 100%, and this is one of the greatest let's say incentives for governments to incentivize a green transition. If you look at it, is the ancillary health impacts as well, because all of these things, whether it's greenhouse gases emissions, whether it's different layers of particulates and air quality measures, they're typically all very highly correlated as well. So you see the health impacts coming along from investments in climate action and renewable energy. And when you look at the numbers, it's really astounding. So we do work on that through ESCAP, the Sustainable Business Network, ESBN, through the Asia Pacific Business Forum as well. And really looking at the evidence base. We do a lot of modeling work also to show the business case for investing. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have a few more minutes left. If there's no other questions here from the floor, my colleagues are sending me questions that are being sent online on the Zoom call. And I looked at them. It's impossible to ask all of them. But I see there's a common thread, actually. Many of the online participants are interested in their own country. So I hear from Indonesia, I hear from Philippines, and from other countries are asking, how is the SDG progressing in my country? Can you say something about it? So perhaps we could also ask more generally, how do we know how our country is doing on the SDGs? And maybe also I'll ask another question that was asked online, and I think maybe it will be a good one for us to wrap today, which is, what happens if the SDGs are not achieved? We know we only have 5 more years until 2030. So what happens after 2030? I don't want to be pessimistic. I mean, we still hope it's going to be achieved, but what happens if it doesn't? So 2 questions.
I leave the difficult question for Shambi to answer as the last one. I'm sure he has a very positive answer to that. But in terms of countries, as I mentioned, you can visit our Asia Pacific SDG Gateway, where you can find country profiles. We have used global SDG indicators to develop dashboards for each country trends. Basically, we have done a trend assessment, and you can see how countries are doing on official SDG indicators, and also data availability. You can understand for each country, and in particular for your country, which indicators have data. And then I recommend to compare that with the national practice. As I mentioned already, lots of countries, some have used this SDG, national SDG tracker, some they have developed their own SDG trackers and reporting on SDG indicators. It would be good to see, in particular, those indicators that country has data and published publicly on the global database, whether they've been used at the national level or not. So you can get those pictures from our website, but most of the countries now also, they have their own national SDG trackers. Over to you for the exciting question, Shambi.
Okay. No, thank you very much. And first of all, this is the last question?
Yes.
Okay. I just had has a certain finality to it. No, I think first of all, I did want to say a little bit more on the positivity of things. That, you know, one of the elements of our program of work for ESCAP, you know, we're focusing very much on the Doha Program of Action, focusing on you know, LDCs and landlocked developing countries. Because of course, as we see the region, the broader region, you know, has a lot of countries which are, you know, doing very well in terms of economic growth or prosperity, and you know, it's a complex region. So you have one of the big challenges is growing inequality across within countries and across countries. So you know, we tend to focus our limited resources on those countries where the need is greatest in terms of technical assistance, and really focusing on how to, you know, to accelerate the SDGs in the LDCs and LLDCs above and beyond. One very exciting opportunity that I had quite recently was to participate in my first UN Special Economic Program for Central Asia, which is brokered by ESCAP and UN ECE, which is really looking at, and I think has gained a lot of traction, especially more recently, with the geopolitical churn and the challenges facing trade and connectivity and mobility and all of these things, that all of the countries of Central Asia are really, really buying into the importance of working together to enhance digitalization, to use AI, other technologies to improve connectivity, trade, and flows of people and products and things through the middle corridor there. But you see the broader benefits that can come to societies if we're doing this in a sustainable way. And so that's really where we're looking, and that's trade and transportation and energy connectivity and climate action and you name it. So that's just one example, I think rather exciting example of ESCAP playing a role, helping to bring countries together, but really unleashing their sovereign priorities. So in terms of the SDGs, you know, not being achieved, or what happens when we get to 2030? Well, obviously, we, you know, life goes on after 2030, and in fact, we are in many respects already, there are a number of different longer-term streams of action in play that go beyond 2030. I mean, we look at UNFCCC and the Paris process, and look at targets for net zero at 2050 or different targets like that. So you know, it is important not to lose sight of 2030. It is important not to give up on meeting the 2030 commitments, because now what we do now, it's like net present value of you know, of the time value of money, right? What you do now makes a big difference years down the road. So this next 5 years before 2030 is going to really dictate to a tremendous degree what we face as a, you know, human community in 2040 and 2050 and 2060 and beyond. Now, what will we do in terms of an actual organizing framework after 2030, the SDGs? That we don't know. Discussions have not yet started. The international community will be launching a process. I would imagine probably the 2027 SDG Summit will be the place where we kind of formally start that intergovernmental, you know, countries of the world coming together and defining the vision that they have for post-2030 framework. So that's coming. But the lesson is clear, as we've been discussing today, that the success of global agendas is directly related to the degree to which communities are engaged, and which it is a bottom-up as well as top-down coming together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think with that, we will conclude the Q&A with a few words from Rachel.
I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone for joining today. Thank you to those online. I can't see them all, but I'm sure there are lots there. And thank you, of course, to everyone actually here with us in the room. Thank you for being here for the launch of the 2026 Asia Pacific SDG Progress Report, but also recognizing that this year is very special, being the 10th edition of the SDG Progress Report. And this milestone really does reflect a decade of dedication. And I want to take a moment also to just say a huge heartfelt thanks to the team who put together the report this year, recognizing there's an awful lot of work that goes into this each year. And although we've just given you the you know, the kind of the short version and the kind of snapshot, behind that there's much more data available that you can dig into on the website. But also there's a lot of people involved in the process, so huge thanks to everyone who's been involved this year. But also let me also take a moment to recognize Armand for your outstanding leadership over the last 10 years, and the fact that you have been here as well, actually for the launch of all 10 of the SDG Progress Report. So thank you for your leadership and all the hard work that's gone in, not just this year, but over the last 10 years. And I know also Kun Krishna working behind the scenes as well, and that she's been kind of working, she's at the back as ever, but she's also put in a huge amount of work over the last 10 years. So a huge thank you to her, as well as, of course, the wider team, but particularly, I mean, it's great that you have been here throughout that process. So huge huge appreciation to everyone for the commitment, the excellence, but also to all of you for being here as well and for being part of this special 10-year kind of celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, and thank you very much to Shombi and Rachel and Arman for taking all the questions and all the insights. And thanks for the audience as well to such an engaging questions you have. And with that, we will conclude the formal part of this event. And the Zoom broadcast will also close now.